On my birthday, my grandfather came to visit me. "Did you like the car I sent you last year?" he asked. I replied, "What car?" I hadn't received anything. My grandfather turned to look at my parents, whose faces had turned pale, and chaos broke loose. Part 1. My name is Alexander, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been the least favorite child in my family. It's not something you can ignore, even if you try to act strong. My parents, Margarita and Jamie, always had a favorite, my younger brother, Esteban. He was the sun that lit up their lives, while I was like a shadow they barely noticed. I'm not exaggerating when I say that since I was little, everything good was for Esteban. The best toys, the nicest clothes, the words of encouragement, the warm smiles, it was all for him. I, on the other hand, received the leftovers, if there were any. I grew up in a house where comparisons were a daily occurrence. Look at Esteban. So smart, so charismatic, my mother would say, while I barely received a "you should try harder," to Alexander. My father was no better. He was always busy praising Esteban for anything from a mediocre drawing to an average grade in school. I, on the other hand, could get perfect grades or win a school competition, and the only thing I would get was a good, but don't get complacent. It was as if my existence was an inconvenience to them. Despite that, I was never one to give up. When I finished high school, my parents made it clear that there was no money for me to go to college. "We can't afford everything. Alexander, Esteban needs more support. He has a brilliant future," my mother once told me with that cold look she always reserved for me. So at 18, I started working at a shopping mall. It was a simple job, the kind that requires no experience. I worked in a clothing store, folded shirts, organized shelves, and smiled at customers even when I was exhausted. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough for the basics: food, some clothes, and an occasional outing with my friends. It was my way of holding my head high, of proving to myself that I didn't need my parents' approval to get ahead. Meanwhile, Esteban didn't work. He didn't even try. My parents justified it by saying he was finding his path or that he was too young to worry about those things. At 20 years old, the only thing he did was spend the day at home playing video games or going out with his friends, always with money that he mysteriously never lacked. I, on the other hand, would come home exhausted from work, my hands covered in calluses and my head full of worries, only to hear the derogatory comments from my family. "I don't know how you're still at that mediocre job," Esteban would tell me with a mocking smile as he tried on a new jacket my parents had bought him. "You should aim higher, don't you think?" My mother would nod in agreement, and my father wouldn't even look up from his newspaper. It was as if my effort was worthless to them. What kept my family afloat was not my parents' work, because to be honest, they didn't work either. A couple of years ago, they both lost their jobs. My mother said it was because of the economic crisis, and my father blamed bad luck, but the truth is I never saw them make an effort to find something new. The reason we weren't out on the street was my grandfather, Antonio. He lived in another country, and since he retired, he had a generous pension and savings that seemed endless. Every month, he sent money to cover the household bills, the rent, utilities, food, everything. He even paid for Esteban's whims, like his designer clothes or his expensive outings. My parents handled all of it because, according to them, it was easier that way. I never saw a cent of that money, but I never asked for it either. I've always believed that you should earn your own way. My grandfather Antonio was the only person in my life who truly seemed to value me. When I was a child, I spent my summers with him, and those were the best moments of my childhood. He would take me fishing, teach me how to fix things in his workshop, and always tell me, "Alexander, you have something special. Don't let anyone make you feel like less." He was the only one who made me feel like I was worth something. But 3 years ago, he moved to another country, and I hadn't seen him since. We spoke on the phone from time to time, but the distance limited our relationship to those short calls. Still, I knew I was his favorite grandson, even though he never said it in those words. It was something you could feel in his voice, in the way he took an interest in me. The day of my 23rd birthday was not much different from the previous ones. My parents had never been ones to celebrate my birthdays with enthusiasm. When I was little, at most they would give me a small cake and sing happy birthday with the same emotion one sings the national anthem in school, out of obligation. But that year, something was different. When I got home after a long shift at the mall, I found a cake on the kitchen table. It wasn't anything special, one of those cheap cakes from the supermarket with frosting that fell apart at the touch. My parents and Esteban were there, and they sang happy birthday with a reluctance that was almost laughable. "Happy birthday, Alexander," my mother said, forcing a smile. My father barely grunted something, and Esteban didn't even look at me. He was busy with his phone. There were no gifts, no cards, nothing, just that sad cake on the table. I found it strange that they had even bothered to buy it, as it wasn't their style. Then my mother said, "This is from your grandfather, Antonio. He wanted you to have something for your day." I nodded gratefully, though something inside me felt that something was off. Why would my parents, who never cared about me, have organized this? But I didn't dwell on it. I thought maybe my grandfather had specifically asked them to do something for me. That night, I cut the cake, and we each had a piece. Nobody said much, and the celebration lasted less than 10 minutes. Then everyone went back to their own thing, Esteban to his room, my father to the couch to watch TV, and my mother to check her phone. I went to my room feeling more alone than ever, but I let it go. It was my life, and I was used to it. What did seem strange was what happened next. In the following weeks, I noticed that my parents and Esteban started to behave differently. Suddenly, they had money. It wasn't just that they paid the bills on time, but they started to indulge in luxuries. My mother bought new clothes from brands she used to say were a waste. My father showed up with an expensive watch, and Esteban was more unbearable than ever, showing off a pair of designer sneakers and talking about a trip they were planning. One day, I overheard my mother on the phone talking about a vacation the three of them were going to take. "Just us, a little getaway to relax," she said, as if I didn't exist. And so it was, they went on a week-long trip to a beach resort. They didn't even invite me. There's no room, Alexander. And besides, you have to work, don't you? My father told me with a smile that I couldn't tell was cruelty or simple indifference. I stayed home, working my shifts at the mall, while they posted pictures on social media, smiling as if they were the perfect family. I'm not going to lie, it hurt. But I also wondered where they were getting so much money. My grandfather always sent enough for the bills, but this was different. Was Antonio giving them more? I decided not to think about it too much. Maybe it was just that, an extra gift from my grandfather. I didn't want to get into trouble. A year passed, and my life remained the same. The same job at the mall, the same salary that was barely enough, the same mockery from my family. Esteban still wasn't working, living like a king, thanks to my grandfather's money, while my parents spoiled him as if he were a prince. I, on the other hand, continued to be the target of their comments. Another year, and you're still doing the same thing, Alexander, my mother once told me in a tone that dripped with contempt. At your age, you should have a better job. Esteban would laugh, and my father would nod as if he agreed. I just clenched my teeth and carried on. When my 24th birthday arrived, I didn't expect anything special. I thought it would be another day of work, another cheap cake, if they even bothered, and the same bored faces from my family. But then something unexpected happened. I received a call from my grandfather Antonio. His voice sounded warm as always, but also excited. Alexander, my boy, how are you? I'm coming to visit you for your birthday today. I want to take you to dinner at the best restaurant in the city. Invite your parents and Esteban. This is a family celebration. I couldn't believe it. My grandfather was coming. I hadn't seen him in 3 years, and the idea of having him here filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in a long time. I accepted immediately, and he told me he would arrive in the evening. I was so excited. Finally, someone who truly loved me would be here. You can click on share more to see if there is a part 2.